Well, this looks like preparations for some bad decisions. I was on the fence, but decided we just couldn't go without this thing. We needed more rust and anguish in our lives. We are just having fun, let me tell you. Trying to get this e-brake cable up in here, you know. At least it's, you know, easy to reach, and it's only like 92 degrees out. Yeah, these rocks are great for your lower lumbar. Finally got that split pulley broke free. Who says you need special tools when you got chisels and hammers? Yeah, the old toolbox is getting the work out. Well, daylight's fading, but luckily them chili dogs are hanging around with me to get through this job. Little jack for some big brakes. About time to try it out. Well, this goes back to that age-old question of why did I buy this? And that's not always as easy of a question to answer as it may seem. There's a lot of factors that can go into something like this that forces you to purchase it. So what am I gonna do with this? I mean, if you don't question your sanity once in a while, are you even trying? So there's the newest acquisition in the Empire of Rust. A 1970 M35 A2C. The C stands for the fold down bedsides. Brought to you courtesy of the AM General Division. So this right here is 13,500 pounds of grade A surplus steel. And of course it's a little bit rusty. I wouldn't own anything else. Fenders may have a couple of speed holes, but they're still holding and solid enough to stand on. It needs a lot of oil and, you know, freeing up of parts after it's kind of been sitting around for a while. Is it me or are those lug nuts on backwards? All the creature comforts of a modern vehicle. Of course, we've got the proper attire for driving this. Now, of course, all of the brakes, axles, and everything needs a full service and going over. And I'm going to have to get used to buying oil in bulk because nothing here takes just 1 or 2 quarts.
Got some 20s on there.
Definitely a little bit more of a challenge to work on. You basically need a ladder anytime to access the engine compartment. You gotta love anything that has a straight pipe from the factory with no muffler. Well, the cat seems to like it. So I still find myself asking the question, how did I end up with this thing? And unfortunately, I seem to ask myself that question all too often. I mean, sometimes it's just too good of a deal on something and you can't pass it up. You have to buy it. Other times it's a project you've been dreaming about and, you know, you've needed it for years, so you just gotta have it. But oftentimes I find it's a combination or, you know, somewhere else in between. I was not searching out one of these things. Now granted, I've always thought it would be cool and, you know, daydreamed and talked about, you know, future projects and engine swaps you could do with one. But I really didn't have the time, space, or money, you know, to get serious about it. So when I heard about this from a guy that I work with, that, you know, he was thinking about selling it, I thought to myself, you don't need this. Just keep moving on and don't think about it anymore. But unfortunately for me, people am aware that I have a weak spot for buying stuff like this, and they kept trying to convince me I needed it. So after a while, he kept beating me up and eventually convinced me to buy it. Now, I did pay about 18 cents a pound for it, which, you know, slightly less than the cheese at the deli store, but I think we did alright. And the next thing you know, I own a Deuce and a half. Now, sometimes you find yourself in a state of not quite buyer's remorse, but buyer's confusion as to, you know, how you ended up where you are. I mean, I'm sure it would make a fine daily driver, and we're going to drive it to work, that's for sure. It's always a tough decision when you're in that middle ground of whether or not you should buy something, because inevitably you end up buying it. Maybe you think you shouldn't, or if you don't buy it, you look back and say, man, I should have got that deal when I had it. And you know, the age-old saying is, you know, the best time to buy something is when the deal's there, which unfortunately is never good timing. Rarely are you in the perfect situation to buy something, you know, when it comes around. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, I seem to always err on the side of buying stuff rather than not buying stuff, and for the most part, I don't regret too much of it. I mean, at times you got to consider what the market's like, you know, and in the case of this, I don't know how much the prices are ever going to keep dropping too much more on these M35s. And I'm not much one for selling stuff, obviously, but, you know, one of the things that should factor into your decisions is, you know, if you can actually get basically your money back out of it without losing too much, or at least breaking even. Those type of deals, you know, beyond storage and, you know, transportation and all that kind of stuff, and title transfer fees, don't forget that, and taxes. Freaking taxes. It's funny though, some of my favorite projects, and now that I look back, some of the best deals I've made, I was really on the fence about even purchasing it at that time, because the price might not have been great, you know, and I really didn't know if I wanted it or needed it at the time. But I decided that, you know, with the way prices were and, you know, with maybe my future plans, it was something that I should get and have. And, you know, years later, I look back, man, prices have gone up, availability has dropped, and it's one of those things that I probably wouldn't be able to buy again these days. And it's crazy how fast that has happened sometimes. You know, we're not talking 20 years. It's like you look back 2, 3, 4 years and it's like, man, these days those things are getting hard to find. Now, you can't bank on collectability and stuff. You know, people try and get collector quads or, you know, sleds or cars that they think is going to be, you know, worth big bucks in years. And that's pretty much a long shot, because you never really know what the collector market's going to do. You should buy it if you want it. And even if that means paying, you know, a little bit extra over maybe what you wanted to pay, in the big picture, you got to see if that's just worth it to you. And if it is, great, you have it. And if it never increases in value, no big deal. You still got what you want. Sometimes it's actually just the chase or the finding of a project that people are really after. You know, that's when actually a lot of the adventure and the fun, you know, I mean, that's all part of a great project and, you know, a start to something. And unfortunately, sometimes people, that's actually what they're after. They end up going out and buying something, and then once the fun part's over, they don't know what to do with it. But it's the gathering of parts, you know, which, you know, definitely that's something I enjoy. Although I gotta say, I'm kind of tempted to drop a 2-stroke Detroit diesel in her.